June 13th, 1944, at 6:10 a.m., near Bretteville-l'Orgueilleuse, west of Caen. Dew beads on nettles, and the hedgerow breathes a damp, green hush. Somewhere beyond the oak and ash line, a tank's slow heart turns rollers clacking, steel links pattering grit. Corporal Ewan McKinnon of the 51st Highland Division lies belly down in a sunken lane, cheek on the earthy smell of crushed cow parsley. Fingers around a weapon that never looks like it should work: a PIAT, projector, infantry, anti-tank. 30-odd pounds of awkward promise and bruised shoulders. The spring inside it is cocked. He can feel the tension, like a coiled thought waiting to become a sentence. Range as she breaks the gap, whispers Private Ian Forbes, the number 2 on the team. Crouched so close, McKinnon can hear the rasp of his breath through the blacked cloth scarf. A Bren team nests farther down the lane, the gun's top-mounted magazine making a square shadow. 2 riflemen, Lee Enfield No. 4s across their forearms, watch the field beyond a slit in the hedge, ready to crack at dismounts. Sergeant McIntyre, the section leader, touches mud with 2 fingers and then his map. The Canadians to their right, Regina rifles, have reported Panthers nosing along the orchard, probing. "We're stitched to them by the ditch," he murmurs. "Nobody gets bold unless you're a bomb." The lane narrows into a gate gap roofed by hawthorn. This is where it will happen, if it happens. Out in the field, the wheat stands thigh-high and just beginning to yellow, bowing in a breeze that carries tank breath hot oil, exhaust, the metallurgy smell that makes the back of the tongue taste like pennies. Birds stop speaking. A crow lifts, offended, as if it knows the script and hates it. They have laid the lane like a stage, a number 75 gammon bomb tucked behind a marker stone for men on foot who don't listen, a string of Mills No. 36 grenades ready, and the PIAT set low on its folding monopod. McKinnon's thumb worries the safety. He knows the ritual of this thing, the lunge of the spigot striking the bomb's hollow tail, the shape-charged cone inside waking flame into a fist, the recoil that kicks like a grudge. He also knows why he is here and not with the new American tubes the rumor mill admires. The PIAT has no backblast to cook you pink inside a hedgerow. It does not shout your position. It asks only that you be close enough to smell the paint on whatever you mean to kill. A growl resolves into a shape. The hedgerow across the field bulges, leaves trembling. Then the snout of a Panzerkampfwagen 5 pushes out Panther Osf A by the rounded mantlet, and the way the daylight finds the angled plates like a knife. Zimmerit paste gives its flanks a curdled texture. The shirts and skirts hang dented where some hedge already took a bite. And its commander rides tall in the cupola, goggles up, cap under the headset band. Chin stuck out as if this is his field and always was. 11 o'clock. 2:50. Forbes breathes. Take him as he turns. Wait. Wait. They have been told the German tankers laugh about this very moment. Hopeless British bomb, they say. Spring toy. Get close, then die. McKinnon heard the same secondhand, in a slit trench with tea gone cold, and the night full of the quiet ticking that follows shelling. He did not answer then. He will answer now. The Panther noses into the gap and swings slightly. Turret easing left. Coke's MG crouching like a patient animal. Its dust is new, fresh cut. The bow wave of its passage makes the wheat lay down and rise again. 40 yards, too far for strangers, near enough for men who have counted rivets. McKinnon lets his breath slide out. 1, 2. His cheek finds the crude sight square. The world narrows to a circle of armor plate just aft of the turret ring, where angles meet bad luck for German design. The Panther's commander points with 2 fingers, and the driver answers with a sigh of throttle. The tank's nose climbs a little over the rutted lane, weight transfer slow as the breath of a heavy sleeper. Now, McIntyre murmurs, not so much an order as a blessing. McKinnon squeezes. The PIAT does not bark. It heaves. The spring slams forward and the bomb leaves on a coughing shove. Tail veins a blur. The air around the lane suddenly drawn inward like a gasp. The recoil drives the butt plate into McKinnon's shoulder and makes his teeth meet. The bomb arcs low and straight, an ugly, purposeful cricket. For a heartbeat, the Panther is an unanswering geometry, numbers and slopes, distance and rule of thumb. Then the shaped charge nose meets the place he chose, and copper turns to a jet hotter than talk, and armor that was a certainty becomes a doorway. The hit does not look like the pictures in training books. There is no heroic explosion, no cinema flame. There is a violent, mean pop and a fist of black dust, followed by a flat flash under the turret's rim and a shoulder shrug from the whole machine, as if it has been told an unkind truth. The engine note flutters. The turret stops moving. Something flickers inside fire as a thought. Reload Forbes already has another bomb up. The long green tube with its fins and threaded collar passed forward like a baby handed into a boat. McKinnon rolls the PIAT back on its heel, uses his body to recock the spring stamp, haul, curse through his teeth as the spigot locks back with a hard metallic acceptance. He shoves the new bomb on, twisting until the threads bite. The Panther's coax hisses a line of tracers over their hedge, a blind man's sweep. MG-42s somewhere down the line start their strict, tearing sermon. Bren on McIntyre snaps, and the Bren rattles an answer, neat and insistent, walking across the lane mouth to make dismounts. Remember, they have bones. A second shape hovers in the green gloom beyond the slab-sided silhouette of a Panzer IV-H, skirts lined like aprons, turret cheeks squared by armor that is older and more honest about it. The Panther coughs again, and this time flames lift like someone struck a match in a closed room. The commander, no cap now, face a moment of childhood, drops into the turret and does not come back. "Hold your second," McIntyre warns. "Hand flat. Let the four show his teeth first." The Panzer IV rolls its nose onto the lane, muzzle brake yawning. The section's riflemen snap a couple of rounds toward the driver's slit. The tank answers with a short, nasty bark that snaps branches overhead and salts the lane with splinters. The men press lower into the earth because earth is what always takes you back. Forbes's knuckles are white on the second bomb. "Angle left track hub," he whispers. "Take his feet." McKinnon shifts the PIAT a hand's width, shoulders the bruise like a familiar joke, and waits for the tank's weight to lift on the rut. The world fills with the clatter of links, the slap of mud, the audible calculation of men in steel boxes deciding whether this lane belongs to them or to physics. He squeezes again. The weapon bucks and the bomb flies, low, mean, and private. The second hit is all consequence. The bomb bites the inner edge of the left track where it rides the sprocket, and the Panzer IV jerks to a halt that looks like surprise. Track links leap like fish. The hull lurches and digs, nose down, engine roaring the sound a man makes when he cannot run and refuses to admit it. Smoke, thin and ashamed. Threads from under the skirts. "Grenadiers," someone shouts. Could be McIntyre. Could be a Canadian down the field, and Mills' bombs arc over the hedge to clatter along the hull and pop like bad thoughts. The Panzer's turret spins half a turn and dies. A hatch kicks and a boot shows, then rethinks. The Bren walks its slow hammer across the cupola. A white cloth flutters and snatches back, uncertain even of its own intention. Shift left, left. The cry rides down the line. Another engine, another promise. The lane that was a diagram becomes a street of noise and decision. McKinnon exhales, shakes his shoulder, nods without looking. The PIAT's spring waits, ready to be hauled again by a man who trusts ugly tools that do not betray him. Somewhere, in a German after-action report that will be written tonight by a tired lieutenant with cordite in his hair, there will be a line about short-range strikes from hedges by the English tube that should not work. Here, in the ditch. There is only the smell of nettles and oil and the taste of penny metal as the shaped charge answer goes on speaking in a voice nobody laughed at twice. June 14th, 1944. Rain pushes a damp sheen over the hedges near Tilly-sur-Seulles, and every lane smells of crushed leaf and coal smoke. The section from 1st Battalion, Black Watch 51st Highland Division, squats under a tarp that tries and fails to be a roof. Corporal Ewan McKinnon cleans mud from the PIAT spigot with the hem of a gas cape, while Private Ian Forbes cradles a fresh bomb like it's something that could change its mind. The training pamphlet creased. Oil-flecked sits open on McKinnon's knee. Its cartoon diagrams too cheerful for a device that breaks collarbones if you're careless. They had learned the PIAT in a field behind a requisitioned manor in Sussex the winter before February, when their breath made proper ghosts. An instructor with a guard's mustache and a sense of humor pared to the bone had shown them how the thing was both simple and perverse. "Spigot mortar," he said, tapping the heavy, spring-driven rod that stands in for a conventional barrel. No blast behind you. Your eyebrows will thank it. But it lives on nerve and geometry. You get close, you pick a place, and you trust the chemistry to do what it was born for. He had them cock it on the ground, plant the butt, stamp down with one boot while hauling the body up with both hands until the spring snicked into the cocking catch. The first time McKinnon did it, he felt the weight of the spring fight through his calves and hips. That peculiar ache that says this weapon is about to join your bones. The instructor watched shoulders, not hands. "Lean with it," he said. "Don't let it run you. It's a tool, not a viper." The bomb itself looked like a tin of soup had mated with a shuttlecock of fat, olive cylinder with a copper-lined nose, tail vanes, and a threaded socket that swallowed the spigot's head. "Hollow charge," the mustache said. "Chalk squeaking on a slate. You are not throwing a lump of TNT at armor and hoping. You're shaping it. The cone focuses the blast into a jet. It doesn't care how thick the plate is as much as it cares how it meets the plate. 90 degrees, if the saints are with you. 60, at worst. Skirts and Zimmerit and German laughter do not prevent mathematics. They practiced on hulks painted zebra and peppered with chalk circles where a kill would count mantlets, turret rings, track sprockets, hull sides behind the road wheels. They learned to fire from the hip in a pinch and from the dirt with the monopod when they wanted to live longer. They learned to love that the PIAT's cough did not announce itself to every machine gun within a county's walk. They learned to hate that the recoil answered like a mule. In the evenings, men compared bruises like schoolboys compare scars. Someone joked that PIAT stood for pain in all tendons, and the name settled as easily as mud in a boot. By the time they crossed from the Solent onto French sand, some of the jokes had been superseded by fact. On June 6th, CSM Stan Hollis of the Green Howards had taken a PIAT to a pillbox at Montfleury and made it remember humility. The Canadian spoke with reverent foulness about a Sherbrooke Fusiliers troop leader saved by a Highlanders PIAT in the orchard south of Norrie. Rumor is a poor witness, but it travels faster than dispatch riders in the bocage, and the bocage thick. Earthen hedge banks faced with roots and stone taught its own class how to wait in a green 1,000-door house and hear the footsteps of metal in rooms you couldn't see. June 16th. Dusk near Le Mesnil-Patrie. The Regina Rifles have had a hard day already. Their friends in the Fort Garry Horse and 1st Hussars trading Shermans to the Hedges and the Panthers of 12. SS. A corporal in the North Nova Scotia Highlanders, McKinnon, doesn't know his name. Only the hard shape of his eyes slides into the ditch beside them with a PIAT across his knees and a grin that looks borrowed. "You'll like this place," he says. "The Germans do. They think the Hedges are theirs." When the Panther came, it showed only a slice of bow, high glasses and muzzle brake, like a portrait miniature of a monster. The Nova Scotian waited until the driver bumped a rut and lifted the left track a hand's breadth. He shot the sprocket at not quite 20 yards, and the world shifted into a new language. After, they compared bruises and swapped lies. The lie that didn't sound like one was this: if you could keep your hands steady. The PIAT would do exactly what it claims in a handbook that nobody believed the first time. They learned technique that no pamphlet printed. Don't put your muzzle through the hedge fire back from shadow so your blast doesn't strip leaves and silhouette you. Choose flanks and armpits turret ring, driver's plate corners, track runs, places where shaped jets don't have to be saints to work. If the angle is poor and you cannot change it, go for what moves the tank, not what protects its tracks. Sprockets, idlers, deny motion. A stopped tank is a lesson everybody on your side can help teach. They learned a new choreography with the Bren and the Rifle Grenadiers. The PIAT speaks once and changes a conversation. The Bren speaks many small, convincing sentences that keep heads inside cupolas and infantry on the far side of lanes. Rifle grenades number 68s at first. Then Mills bombs on dischargers write punctuation along hulls and in the minds of men inside them. When the lane is wrong for the tube, a gammon bomb becomes grammar. None of it is pretty, all of it is work. The enemy adapted, because the enemy is not a fool in a story. By the last week of June, tank commanders from Panzer Lehr and 12 SS were sending half-tracks with dismounts to beat the hedges before the panzers rolled their noses into openings. Panther drivers nosed across gate gaps at oblique angles, presenting the shallowest slice of side they could manage. A Panzer IV might stop short of a junction and let infantry ferret it while the tank stood, turrets slewing, waiting for a flash to answer. After-action notes found in slit trenches, the paper stiff with rain and field ration grease contained irritated lines about short-range hollow-charge rifles and English tubes that were effective only at close quarters but nevertheless responsible for several losses in the orchards. The tone read like someone whose joke had come back with teeth. July 1st, a morning that pretends to be gentle near Rauray Ridge. The sky is so clean a man might think of home, then force himself not to. McKinnon's section lies under a wild rose and hawthorn face and watches a road that a map calls a secondary, which today is a main artery for men who want Khan and men who do not intend to give it. A Panzer IV noses up the shallow rise with a bicycle squad strung along its left like punctuation. McKinnon doesn't take the shot. It is wrong 60 yards, shallow angle, too much Europe between him and a good answer. He holds the safety with a thumb and waits for the tank to commit a small sin. When it does, when the driver mounts the cambered road crown to clear a ditch and lifts his near-side run, McKinnon breathes out and makes his ugly spring cough speak. The tank's track bloats, bursts, steel leaps. The tank digs a front corner. Put. The Bren begins its patient commandment, and the rifles add clauses. Men scatter into a field that doesn't want them. The road is not theirs anymore. Not every PIAT shot is clean. In a farmyard near Shoe, an impatient lad fired too soon, too sharp an angle for the cone to bite, and the bomb skittered like a stone off a pond, slapping the Panther's side and bursting in a waste of heat and faith. Lesson: move 3 yards, wait 3 beats, take 1 more breath. In a lane near Fontenay, a bomb struck a spare track link bolted on a Panzer IV's flank, and the jet smothered in steel that wasn't meant to be armor but chose to be. Lesson: sometimes the enemy's superstition hanging talismans of spare track becomes hard physics. You aim around the luck. The infantry's opinion of the PIAT changed in a way men will not admit when they are cold and trying to be funny. The thing that had been a joke you shared to keep its teeth dull became a member of the section like the Bren, a burden everybody had carried and now would hand forward with quiet care. The ammunition. 2 bombs with their awkward fins and threaded collars stopped being those damn tins and became, get me 2 more. Quick now. There were still curses. There was more respect. The weapon had not become beautiful. It had become true. On July 8th, as the barrage for Operation Charnwood rolled like a low ceiling toward Caen, McKinnon and Forbes lay under a hedge that smelled of trampled nettles and Danish butter cookies from a looted ration tin, and listened to German armor reposition on the far verges. The section leader tapped Ewan's boot twice. "We'll marry the guns," he said. "Bren keeps the heads down. The tube takes the ankle. If they laugh, they'll spit out their teeth." McKinnon smiled without showing it. The bruise under his collarbone had turned a map's worth of colors. The PIAT lay in the ditch like a dog that only ever bites enemies. June 26, 1944. Rauray Ridge, west of Caen. Morning lies gray and low over the wheat, the air thick with the smell of rain that fell at dawn, and the machine grease stink of vehicles that moved before first light. Operation Epsom has drawn German armor like iron to a magnet. 12. SS Hitlerjugend, wheeling north of Shoe. Elements of Panzer Lehr feeling for flanks. Panthers and Panzer Fours coming up on the narrow roads the French call chemin's creux and the Scots have decided to own. The ridge is a gentle thing, farm tracks, orchards, hedge banks stitched with roots and stone, but it is the tallest word in this sentence. Whoever writes their name on it will dictate the grammar of the day. Corporal Ewan McKinnon's section from 1st Black Watch has been dug into the western face since midnight. Their trench bites the base of a hedgerow. The face is sod, roots, old bottles. The back wall is a sentence of sandbags. The PIAT lies in the damp dirt with its spring cocked. Fins of 2 bombs nested in a biscuit tin to keep them from clanking. Private Ian Forbes has rubbed the spigot with an oily rag and set the folding monopod into a wedge of earth so it will not skitter when the mule kick comes. 10 yards left. The Bren team has a narrow slit through the hawthorn clipped neat with bayonet points. Above, the sky is a single lid of pewter, and the wheat beyond the hedge carries a low wind like a whisper of tools in the next room. "Stand to," Sergeant McIntyre says in a voice that would not wake a sleeping child. On the road below, a scout car with a Canadian corporal and an armful of field telephone wire jerks to a stop, exchanges a glance with McIntyre, and sets off again, the wire paying out like a thought being laid along the ground. The first sound is not engines, it is the patter of dismounts, boots on road, breath echoing under helmets. A German advance guard light infantry with soft caps and long faces rakes the hedge with long, wasteful bursts. Bullets snapping so close the leaves jump like fish. They step careful to the verge and shovel grenades into the green with wrists that have learned the distance. For a minute, the hedge is a dry rain of soil. The Bren replies with 6 neat, measured sentences, and the helmets go down out of sight. "Hold the tube," McIntyre whispers, a palm hovering open above the PIAT as if feeling heat. "We don't spend it on men who can change their minds." Then the armor comes. You do not hear a Panther approach as much as you feel dirt take a breath under your belly. Links slap, idlers tick. A clutch lets out a long sigh like a man settling into a chair he suspects will break. Beyond the wheat, a hedge bulges. A nose finds the gap. Mantlet. Rounded the osf. Again, a gun that makes men in trenches think about their souls. Its bow wave lays the wheat in a neat part, and then lifts it again with indifference, behind and offset. A Panzer IV rides left of center, shirts and skirts clanking like plates stacked by a tired cook. On its right fender, someone has strapped a shovel that chatters on the bolts. The Panthers had mocked the PIAT in ready rooms from Bayeux to Evrecy spring toy, hollow charge pop gun, an English contraption that requires a man to be close enough to see his own fear reflected in your paint. They were not wrong about the range pamphlets' talk of 100 yards. The bocage makes 30 feel like the end of the world. But they had misjudged 2 things: what a hedgerow can hide, and what a man who has decided to hold a field will do with a weapon that does not speak out of both ends. "Let him take the crown," McIntyre murmurs, eyes at leaf height, voice a thread. McKinnon can see the driver's plate, the little shutter over the vision block, the smear of old mud in the jobs of the glacis. He slides the PIAT's butt into his shoulder, cheek to the crude sight, left hand on the bomb's shoulders to keep the nose steady. Forbes's breath is a patient metronome at his ear. The Panther mounts the camber of the road, and in doing it lifts its near side track a hand's breadth. Exactly what hedgebank and rain and habit have conspired to teach. McKinnon squeezes. The PIAT lurches into him. His teeth clack. The bomb leaves with its ugly cough, low and fast. The hit is inside the turret ring, a fraction aft of where training boards say here. Copper becomes a jet. Steel becomes an argument it cannot win. The engine note flutters and fails. The turret makes the beginning of a decision and then forgets it. A flat. Black smoke rolls out from under the cupola like a bad secret escaping a door. Forbes rams the next bomb on while McKinnon recocks the spring with a boot and a grunt, the spigot biting into its catch like a dog into a stick. Beyond. The Panzer IV has already made its own choice, nose into the hedge mouth and traversed to cover the ridge with Coke's and main gun. A white splash of tracer tears leaf and air. The line shivers over their trench as if to saw trench and men and roots into one long yes. The section's riflemen answer with quick Lee Enfield phrases at the driver's slit and the hull MG slit, a superstition that sometimes becomes a miracle. A gammon bomb arcs from the left one of the Canadians, heaving with the economy of men who've done this for 30 days, and bursts against the Ivy's side plates in a sheet of concussion that does not pierce but does persuade. Feet. Forbes breathes. Take his feet. McKinnon angles a hand's breadth lower, sighting on the inner run where sprocket teeth lift track. He squeezes. The bomb strikes like a boot under a knee. Links leap in a bright, stupid spray. The Panzer Fours stumbles in place, gear whining, engine clutching at road that no longer obeys. It is not a kill. Yet the difference between dead and stopped in a lane like this is the difference between living and writing letters. "Bryn, give me a sheet," McIntyre calls, and the Bryn lays a neat, honest line along the tank's cupola rim. A hatch jolts half-high and slams. The coax chatters again, lower, pouting. The loader panicking on the Travers handwheel and finding nothing he likes. The counterstroke comes from the wheat, not the road. A half-dozen German grenadiers, field gray, running dark over damp thighs. Bread bags bumping hip bones pop up at 30 yards, as if a field had grown men. Their sergeant bellows, and a bundle of stick grenades leaves his hand in faith rather than precision. The Mills bombs answer. 1, 2, 3, plopping in a line that makes the Germans all elbows and second thoughts. McIntyre barks, "Hold the tube, hold it." Because even now, a PIAT bomb is not for men. It is for the things they believe will save them. The second Panther appears beyond the first, too far back, its driver impatient and its commander standing high, faced like a boy who has been told to dash across a schoolyard under a hailstorm. He yells something that is probably sense. The Bren bites the air between him and the lesson. He drops, and the tank noses off the crown to the far verge, seeking a sideline that will hide its belly. That is when a 6-pounder gun, someone's pride behind a barn wall down the lane, speaks with a proper, ringing report, and takes a neat coin out of the Panther's lower plate. The tank heaves and crouches. Smoke blooms lazy from its exhausts. Not a KO, no cheers, but a change in the day's arithmetic. Everybody is working in the same sums. Now stop the heavy thing first, then deal with men. A runner from the Royal Scots jog trots up the ditch, his sleeve wet and his face full of somebody else's mud. Message, "Sergeant, hold until relieved," and then he grins, because he knows all orders mean the same in a field like this. He glances at the PIAT and nods at bruises he can't see. "Bloody toy," he says, affectionate as a man talking to a mule that has just pulled a cart from a ditch. In the lull, that is not a lull, only the space between stages of a problem, the section hears a sound that belongs to someone else's century, the thin, clipped snarl of a Panzer commander's radio, talking to a net that is frayed. Kurz, links, Hol Ladung, Vorsicht Hecke, short-range hollow charges, hedge caution. The words ride the lane and settle in the ditch like leaves. Laughter in German ready rooms still exists, somewhere. It is quieter now. It has to compete with lists of burnt-out hulls and quiet lines in after-action notes. Losses by short-range strikes from hedgerow and ditch. Effectiveness of enemy hollow charge projector underestimated. McKinnon checks the bomb collar with a thumb. Forbes cups a hand over the sight to keep rain from finding it. The PIAT lies warm along the ditch like an ugly dog that has done exactly what it was bred to do. Down the road, men haul a 6-pounder's trails to angle for a better sentence. The ridge holds, and because it holds, the map in a brigade caravan 2 fields back will be erased and redrawn, and the next order will begin with the word advance. "Stand by," McIntyre says, and smiles a fraction because the biggest thing about the day has already happened, and they are still here to hear him say it. We'll let them try the gate again, and we'll answer with manners. July 8, 1944, north of Caen. First light without warmth. The barrage rolls like a moving ceiling, a mile-wide carpenter planing the sky, then lifts by the book. And infantry pour forward under the last echo. Operation Charnwood has begun. To the west, the 59th Staffordshire Division steps out past Galmanche. To the east, the 3rd British Division fields for the factories and chimneys. Between them, the 3rd Canadian Division shoulders through the villages that have become new words: Buron, Authie, Grouchy, on the far flank, across the Orne. The 51st Highland Division pins and worries, prying at the lines so nothing inside Caen can move without paying a toll. The city is a horizon of gray rectangles and broken teeth. You can smell damp stone under the cordite, and an odd sweetness burst flower from a mill, opened by a shell into white breath. Corporal Ewan McKinnon's section, 1st Black Watch, takes its place in the slow, dense river that follows time on target. They have traded yesterday's hedgerow face for low walls and gate pillars, doorway to doorway. The PIAT rides slung like a brutal shepherd's crook over McKinnon's shoulder. Bombs in sandbag-wrapped pairs thud at his ribs with each crouch trot. Private Ian Forbes carries the tin with the 2 good ones. Noses capped and threads greased his quiet superstition that the first 2 fired each day should be the ones he cleaned last night while listening to rain pick at canvas. The city speaks in tight alleys. Tank engines thrum somewhere you cannot see and, in seeing, cannot answer. The Canadians ahead mark corners with chalk arrows and unit codes and paste strips of white cloth to door lintels to show cellars cleared. A chaplain ducks past with his helmet at a humble angle. A map in a case he will not look at while he's in the street, from a church whose roof is a memory. Pigeons lift like shaken ash when a shell falls 2 streets away. At the junction near the Abbé Dardenne stone, weeds. A gate that looks like conclusions. McKinnon's section gets the first medal of the day. A Panzer IV, skirts rattling, noses out of a side lane and presents an ugly, useful flank. The Bren barks to nail heads down. 2 rifle grenades arc, fat and slow, to slap noise and dust against the hull. The Panzer jolts, then backs, then pauses in that dangerous way that means gunner checking sight picture. McKinnon is already down. PIAT monopod into rubble. Cheek to the stubby sight. 8-5 yards, Forbes says from the corner of his mouth. A number that is both too far and exactly what the lane will give. No 70 now. The Panzer tries to pick the wrong gear. McKinnon leans into bone memory and takes the quartering shot where skirt meets sponson just ahead of the idler. The cough is small and personal. The bomb hits a plate bolt and gives the jet a road into trouble. The track whips. A length slaps like a mad snake. The tank squats, then lurches sideways to rest its weight on a door lintel older than the war by centuries. The coax slashes in bright tantrum, but the hull is done moving, in a Caen street. That is often the same as being done. "Down, down," Sergeant McIntyre murmurs as if to a child. Because the impulse to watch the fire take is older than men and newer than this city. They fold into the shadow of a butcher's shop whose window still has viandes in flaking paint. A shell from somewhere honest 6-pounder or Sherman arrives late to a conversation already decided and completes the sentence with blunt grammar. The Panthers learn the streets the way men learn a new church tripod, slow, reverent about corners, turrets searching for an amen. One shows its bow in the Rue du Gaillon, then veers at a diagonal to deny a flat plate and bless itself with slope. Inside. A commander with SS runes on his collar and worry in his mouth says something about Holadung and Abston hollow charges and distance, and the driver obeys with the patience of a man steering a cathedral door. McKinnon refuses the front. He cuts through a courtyard to a rear wall with ivy that smells of coins and rain. He and Forbes crawl to a breach where a door used to be, and gather seconds with their breath while the Panther presents a sliver of flank that shrinks as it slews. "Wait it," Forbes whispers. "Wait it." The window narrows to a scandal of inches. McKinnon draws the tube into his shoulder, sights not on armor but on motion, the rising run of track climbing a street crown, and sends the bomb into a triangle of light between road wheel, skirt, and hull. The kick goes up his spine like a carpenter's mallet. The jet writes its brief, bright sentence inside steel. And the tank stalls with that specific cough he now recognizes like a word for stop in another language. Smoke blossoms lazy from the engine deck louvers. The Panther's turret begins to turn on muscle memory and then gives up on pride. In the slack that follows, German infantry make a good, bitter try. They flood a doorway with grenades and words, and find Bren fire that has been waiting, trimmed to a height and a length like a well-cut coat. A boy in field gray with shoulders that don't fit his war rises in a window with a Panzerfaust and catches a Lee Enfield single, precise punctuation in the wood beside his hand. He leaves the weapon and the window together. McIntyre's voice stays metronome calm. No second looks. We don't drink from the same well twice. The PIAT is already being recocked boot on butt plate. McKinnon's back bowed against the spring's stubborn hymn, because any lane that has held one tank this hour will hold another the next, by noon. The assault has chewed into Caen's northern apron as far as Saint-Germain-la-Blanche-Herbe and the industrial squares along the Orne canals. The paper factories and chimneys turn the air into a dry soup of grit. A Regina Rifles runner with a bandaged ear shoves a folded message into McIntyre's hand, penciled. Wet. Angry Panther hulls near the rail spur. Short-range tubes effective. Ammunition scarce. Send up bombs. The word tubes hangs in the throat like an apology turned compliment. At a rail crossing where the gate arms are splintered white bones, a Stoogie 3 squats low, gun borderline depressed. It has the good sense to be dangerous in streets. It also has a driver who is a half-second late on a decision. McKinnon takes the knee-high shot across the glacis corner, greedy for a turret ring he cannot have, and the bomb chews into the driver's plate seam instead. The jet fangs the small world behind that armor, and the assault gun becomes still in a way men do not argue with. Another Stoogie tries to shoulder past it and ends with its nose in a cart of bricks. A Sherman from the Fort Garry horse lays a 75mm round into the brick cart for lack of a better target. And suddenly the intersection remembers it was once a place where two paths met to talk. Afternoon brings the brittle humor of men working inside stone. PIAT teams share doorways with number 36 Mills and gammon bombs, with ankles and elbows and boiled sweets found in a cupboard that still holds a postcard from Paris. Forbes drags a bomb tail on a floorboard nail and stops to tape it. Hands patient, the way a saddler fixes a strap. A Staffordshire corporal teaching a Canadian lancejack how to shoulder launch without taking the whole recoil in his teeth mutters. Lean it like a barrow down a step-eye. That's it, don't let it own you. Someone laughs, then catches himself as a shell licks a corner off the house and the laugh becomes a cough. The enemy's notes will later show their day in lines that grind their teeth. Engel. Handrohr mit Hohlladung. Wirksam aus kürzester Entfernung in Straßenkampf. English hand tube with hollow charge. Effective at the shortest range in street fighting. And Panther verloren im Nahkampf durch Sprengladung an Kette Trieb. Panther lost in close combat by explosive on chain sprocket. Somewhere a Hauptmann with neat script underlines Kurds twice and draws a small square for Stat and a smaller triangle for Faust PIAT. As dusk edges blue into the gaps, the line steadies on the city's northern bones. Caen North is made of corners held and doorways judged. The south still belongs to tomorrow's plan and the next artillery table. McKinnon's section occupies a cellar that smells of apples and coal. Candles guttering on crates that read Calvados, 1938. The PIAT reclines against sandbags like a tired, bad-tempered dog that has earned a place by the fire. Forbes rubs the spigot down with an oily rag and replaces the safety with the care a man gives a latch that saved his house. McIntyre listens to the net voices of staffs, Canadians, sappers, and marks the night with pencil stubs on a damp, unfolding map. Outside, somewhere beyond their street, a tank clanks away with the cautious, resentful grace of a beaten bully. Above, pigeons settle back into the ruin of their roof as if roofs were still for sleeping. The city breathes. The laughter in German ready rooms about springs, about toy mortars, about English contraptions has been replaced by new words in diaries and debriefs effective. Short range, unexpected, in the deep quiet between shells. McKinnon looks at the ugly tube and does not love it. He trusts it. That is the better thing. July 18th, 1944, south of Caen. The air smells of wet wheat and brick dust. Night's thunder bombers rolling Goodwood's iron carpet east of the Orne has drifted to a long, animal growl on the horizon, here, in the streets that tilt into orchards and railway cuttings. 2. Canadian Corps opens Operation Atlantic, while British armor strides for the open ground. The city behind is a gray furnace. Ahead, Verrieres Ridge lies low and mean under a sky that cannot make up its mind. It will rain because Normandy decides and men obey. Corporal Ewan McKinnon's Section 1st Black Watch has been lent to a battalion group easing along the rails south of the Columbell's chimneys. The stone here is pale and chipped. The lanes are bordered by pear trees, whose leaves shine black from the morning's on and off drizzle. The PIAT rides at McKinnon's shoulder again, paint scarred by Cahn's doorways. Private Ian Forbes lugs the bomb tin in a gas cape against the rain, each step a thud of handles against his hip. Behind them, the steady two-note of a Bren lives at the edge of hearing, as reliable as breathing. A Regina Rifles platoon moves parallel in the next field, faces glued with damp dust, a radio aerial cutting arcs when the signaler stumbles. The first Panther of the day shows as a geometry problem before it becomes a machine slope and shadow through wet leaves. Turret low against the hedgerow line, engine working at that patient. Contemptuous idle. It noses the lane where the rails bend, then holds, turret shifting in a slow sermon on patience. Somewhere to their left, a Churchill from an attached squadron tries an angle and eats a blunt shell that turns its fender into a salute. The Churchill reverses the length of a hedge, calm as a withdrawing bishop. Everyone else feels the lane tighten. Right flank orchard, Sergeant McIntyre murmurs, chin lifting once, no more. The section melts to the tree line. Wet leaves tick against webbing. The smell of bruised pear hangs odd and homelike in men's throats. The Panther eases forward, idler just visible, the skirt plates hanging with the same slight inward tilt that fooled men in towns and hedgerows alike. Forbes unsnaps the tin, his hands check. By habit more than sight. Caps, threads, fuses. The first bomb is his good one, the one he cleaned dry in Cahn with rag and breath while the rain worked at canvas. He passes it to McKinnon as if handing up a spade in a graveyard useful. Inevitable. Distance, McKinnon breathes. Forbes tastes the lane with his eyes. 50, closing, 45. The Panther pauses with the insolence of weight. Its driver thinks about the next corner and the next breath. That's when McKinnon drops to a knee, brings the butt plate to mud, and leans into the tube like a man bracing a stubborn gait. The sight stub is a wet fingernail. He remembers the rule the canstone taught: do not hunt the plate, hunt the motion, and lays the pipper on the triangle where track, skirt, and road meet. A handbreadth ahead of the idler. The cough is small and domestic. Recoil punches his shoulder and tries to shake his teeth loose. The bomb is across the lane before the rain can choose a new speed. A dull, specific thud. Then the Panther jerks and drops its right nose a fraction. A man tripping on a stair he thought he knew by heart. Track leaps. Idler bites mud. The whole beast hunches onto the bank with a sound like furniture dragged across a church floor. The turret swings toward the orchard with a patient hatred. McKinnon is already rolling into the trunk shadow, mud cold at his belly. He hears the coax begin, and the hedge above him ticks with neat, bright bites. Forbes has the second bomb in his hands, fuse cap between teeth because he trusts his tongue to keep it more than his fingers. Misfire drill if needed, he says, because a superstition about spoken readiness has kept him from meeting bad luck head-on more than once. Up! McIntyre gestures. 2 fingers. Bren to the right sings at a kneecap height measured. Mean. A Canadian PIAT 2 fields over barks twice like a farmer cursing and a high. Angry clang answers from a lane choked with carts. Across the net, clipped and calm Panther immobilized, engine deck smoking. Infantry dismounting. Typhoons on call, 2 minutes. Another voice. Same district, more breath. Hold your paint rockets inbound. The rain freshens. Leaves shine. The Panther's engine surges to a bellow and then sulks down again, a man who wants to kick a door and cannot find the hinge. The turret gives up on the orchard, too many trees. Too many ghosts and slews toward the Churchills that lurk like unamused oxen behind a chalk stack. McKinnon feels the lane open, the old geometry returning. The second bomb goes when the commander, impatient, sticks his head to see what his world insists on hiding. It strikes the corner of the engine deck, bites through a louver's slit, and writes a bright private letter inside steel. Flame is lazy at first, then convinced. The coke stutters, falters, dies. The hatch remains in its offered tilt until someone inside remembers the commandment that has suddenly become optional and drops it shut again. Off, off, McIntyre says. The law is older than this war. Do not drink from the same well twice. They fold backward through pear trunks, stepping over a barrow with blackened apples, and the wheels still bright where a farmer sanded it last year. In the next lane, a panther claws at reverse with one track and scours a wall to chalk dust. PIAT barks somewhere close to the ground, the sort of shot a man takes flat on his belly 2 handspans from a ditch. A maple leaf voice hoots once in triumph, then steadies to report Panther stopped. Crew bailing, our guns engaging, request smoke at the rail bend. Smoke arrives before the words have cooled a thin white veil breathing from the rail bed where sappers have set pots. Through it, shapes move, men bent double under packs and rifles that suddenly look too small for the work. A mortar squad wrestling a tube like an awkward cousin. A medical orderly with a tin of sulfa balanced in his palm as if it were tea. The weather makes the day sluggish, then brittle. When the rain lifts, typhoons find the road a pair of brutish angels with rockets slung and cut it in square mouthfuls near ifs. The smoke wash rolls across the orchard and comes over McKinnon's face in a chemical breath that tastes like fireworks in school. He squints at the PIAT spigot and thumbs the safety on, the way a man puts a tidy lid on a tool that could be stepped on in the dark. Along the rails, the fight contracts to human scale. A German machine gun in a culvert makes a neat doctrine out of dirt until a sapper shoves a 4-pound RE charge into the mouth and gives the doctrine something new to think about. A Panther hull with the grace knocked out of it becomes a corner for both sides. Grenades trading across the metal like cards slapped in a game. A boy in Canadian battle dress crawls to the glacis and leaves a gammon bag in a crease that shouldn't matter and does. The bag goes with a flat animal thump. A new seam opens where none existed, and air gets into a place where air makes engines sulk. At midday, the order of the day arrives in mud-soaked shorthand press to Verrières, approach hold line if tanks mass PIAT to forward companies. Someone has decided that what worked once will work again until it doesn't. McIntyre nods once, as if the paper had said eat or sleep. He breaks the section across 2 hedges and points McKinnon's team to a ditch that smells of rust and frogs. For half an hour, nothing in particular happens. Rain becomes mist. A train that will never run again hunches at a siding with its cab window shot to sand. A man in a railway cap sits beside it and smokes, unbothered by men or history. Then the lane learns a new sound, the careful, deep roll of panthers feeling their way. Not arrogant now, just methodical. 2, then 3, then a 4th. They move in the shape men use when they have read each other's letters too often. The section works by numbers. A Bren slaps the nearest infantry escort at shin height to persuade it to lie down. A 2-inch mortar drops smoke exactly where McKinnon's sight ring wants it. Not a sheet, but a ragged scarf that makes men hesitate without sheltering them. Forbes whispers ranges like psalms. 60, 55, hold, now. The first bomb takes a track knuckle and does the old ugly work. The second, from the far hedge, another team. Another orchard punctures a driver's plate seam with the mean luck of a nail that finds the one rotten step in the stairs. German after-action notes will later travel by courier to desks that are too clean, they will say, with grammar that tastes of iron and control. Mehrere Panzer im Nahkampf durch Hochladungsrohre und Minen ausgefallen. Entfernung unter 50 Mbit. Erwartete Wirkung unterschätzt. Several tanks in close combat, disabled by hollow charge tubes and mines. Distance under 50 meters. Expected effect underestimated. A captain will underline unterschätzt and wonder why the word looks so small on paper. By evening, 2 Canadian Corps holds a stitched hem along the ridge's skirt. Not a flag on top, but fingers in its pockets. Panthers wait in orchards and watch smoke thin with the patience of men who have chosen a different hour to be brave. McKinnon's section digs into a ditch that pretends to be dry. Forbes cleans the spigot with that exact, house-proud care that has become his unspoken prayer. McIntyre marks arcs on a ration box lid with a carpenter's pencil and shares a last woodbine with a platoon sergeant from the Regina Rifles, who nods at the PIAT and says the sentence that has crept across battalions since Can Ugly Thing saves lives. Rain starts again, gentler. A freight car creaks as if a man had shifted his weight inside, somewhere in the mist. An engine turns over and then thinks better of it. The day that began with bombers ends with men counting bombs, and the distance at which everyone used to laugh now looks to German crews, like the distance at which the hedgerows bite. July 20th, 1944. The ridge is a wet back under a tarpaulin sky. All day the air has worn the smell of smashed brick and sour wheat. All day the wind has combed smoke into long gray hair over Saint-André-sur-Orne and Ifs, in the Canadian lines. The lull that isn't a lull works on men's hands checking webbing buckles, counting magazines, tugging the Bren's bipod one notch lower. In a slit trench scooped into chalk and clay, Corporal Ewan McKinnon sits cross-legged with the PIAT across his thighs like a misbehaving child. Private Ian Forbes leans a bomb tin against the trench wall and rubs the spigot head with an oily rag as if polishing an altar step. Misfire drill, Forbes says softly. A superstition dressed up as procedure. They go through it slower than they would under fire tube half open to confirm. Safety checked, safe then live. Shoulder plate snug in the mud. Spring fully cocked those 3 tugging turns on the lever that make a man's shoulders hum. Bomb tail threads clean. Fuse cap off and stowed. McKinnon watches the rag catch light from a break in the cloud and thinks of Sunday shoes. Sergeant McIntyre slides down into the trench with the silence that age gives a man even when he is not old. He smells of damp wool and woodbines and the lemon oil some men put on rifle stocks in peacetime. Message from Coy HQ, he says. Enemy armor forming behind Verrières. Counterattack at last light. We stay until they change their minds. Bren on the left arc. PIAT this lane only, no second pass. If they overshoot, we let them learn. They set the lane like a snare. A ditch carries water and the smell of iron along the hedgerow's base. 2 culverts mouth toward their trench like dark, mean opinions. 50 yards forward, a knuckle of rubble chokes the track where a barn used to stand, white stone blocks laid down flat by the bomber's hand. McKinnon sights on the place where any panther trying to squeeze through must show its teeth. Forbes marks ranges on a damp ration box lid with the stump of a pencil 60-meter rubble, 45-meter culvert, 30-meter trench lip. The numbers look like a schoolboy's work and feel like a will. In the low hour, the ridge turning the color of a bruised sound comes first. It rolls in under the rain, careful and deep, nothing like a Cromwell's quick chatter or a Churchill's farm tractor patience. German diesels. Big cats moving with the caution of men who have read too many letters about other men's last mistakes. A runner trips down the trench line and ducks into the next bay with a password and a joke, both clipped short by breath. Above the hedgerow, wheatbacks bow toward them as if the field had taken a long breath. Nebelwerfer. Someone whispers as far-off pipes cough a hoarse shout and smoke claws into the sky behind the ridge. The rockets will rake the rear. The armor will take the front with the tidy malice that's kept them in the fight this long. McIntyre raises 2 fingers. Bren swings left to a corner that will cut a Panzer Grenadier squad off its tank. The 2-inch mortar man, a compact lad from Winnipeg with hymn-book ears, nests a bomb in the tube and waits for the word to lay a white scarf at the rubble knuckle. The first Panther shows, black against the bruised sky, low and long, turret already shearing a slow arc. Another rides 30 yards right, offset. A third hulks in reserve with its nose toward a track break. They have learned. The second tank noses a little higher, watching the ditch for mines and men. McKinnon eases the butt plate into the mud and leans, letting the tube's bad temper settle against his shoulder. His breath comes short and fine, the way men breathe when they don't want to be seen by the air. "Smoke," McIntyre says, barely a word. The mortar coughs and the scarf blooms at the rubble like a schoolmistress's handkerchief, not cover so much as annoyance. The lead Panther wavers half a wheel turn. A pause, and in the pause McKinnon takes the weight on his left knee and smooths the sight stub's black chip onto the triangle where track, skirt, and road meet. He hears his own voice as if overheard. "Hold now." The PIAT coughs its homely cough and tries to kick him down the trench. The bomb winks into the smoke, finds steel by sound more than sight, and thuds in at the idler's line. The Panther's nose drops a hand's breadth, enough to turn its careful stride into a stumble. Its driver throttles to wrench free. The right track bites air and pees the ditch bank into the lane. McKinnon rolls out of habit and sense. Coke snaps along the hedgerow like angry knitting needles. Chalk leaps from the trench lip into his teeth. Forbes's hand is already in the tin. The second bomb comes up like a midwife's instrument necessary. Cruel, saving. 45. Forbes breathes, the word a prayer and a math answer. McKinnon puts the sight stub where the engine deck louvers meet the rear plate and squeezes a 2-count late to let the angle open like a good latch. The bomb bites deep and writes its hot truth inside. Flame is sullen, then convinced. The turret checks, thinks, checks again. Slews past them with the stubborn refusal of a man who knows he has one job and cannot find it. On the left, Bren barks at knee-height 2 beats. Pause. 2 beats making German infantry lie down as if scolded. A steel hand granite knocks chips off the culvert. An ungenerous gesture rather than a plan. And a PIAT 2 trenches down, answers it with a flat thump that hops a half-track up onto its shocks like a cat surprised by a bucket. Across the net. A Canadian voice, patient and exact Panther bogged by rubble at track bend. Second immobilized by track damage. Crew dismounting. Do not engage with small arms typhoons inbound. Another. Excitement tucked under manners, marking with yellow smoke. Keep heads down. Wind toys with the smoke. Rain returns in a light. Fine soldering of the air. The surviving Panther edges to back out and catches the rubble with its left skirt. The plate peels like a biscuit tin lid. A typhoon growls over the ridge with barbaric confidence. Rockets slung, and the backwash paints the hedgerow leaves white for a blink. The rockets stitch the road and leave it rucked like a bad tablecloth. The Panther stops as if sulking. Men in its shadow make the small decisions men make at dusk: how far to run, where to stop, which pocket carries the last letter. They ghost into orchards. The orchard breathes and swallows them. Off. McIntyre says the old law. No hero work. They fold back 2 bays and hand their piece of road to men with different tools. A Churchill nose peeks up with the quarrelsome innocence only Churchills manage. Hull MG wagging like a dog greeting a guest. It means to bite if the guest insists. Somewhere right of the track, a German 75 snaps, and the Churchill wears a bright star of chalk and shrugs. Its turret answers with that slow farmer's certainty. Work resumes. Night doesn't fall so much as thicken. Runners ghost down the line. A whispered order travels like a wet wick. Hold for spring, the word nobody loves. Push again on the 25th. Men who wear black watch badges look at one another from under brows and do not say it aloud. The ridge will cost. They take the cost in advance where they can. PIATs go forward into company HQs with the same care men use in handing over a neighbor's child. Mind the weight. Mind the temper. Mind the spring. Forbes wipes the spigot head with a fresh patch and mutters his superstition about misfires, too low to be heard by anyone who doesn't need to. German after-action scribbles begin their quiet travel east. In a farmhouse near Maysur-Orn, an Oberleutnant builds sentences against a table leg with a broken pencil. Na Kampfholadung, Entfernung unter 30 to 60 Millimeter Panzer fahrunfähig. Feind im Heckenfeld kaum zu orten. Close combat hollow charge distance under 30 to 60 meters tank. Unable to move, enemy in hedgerow country hardly locatable, he underlines Kaumzu Orton as if the line could find men in hedges. Rain taps the ration box lid where Forbes has written his sums. McKinnon leans the PIAT against the trench wall and feels the deep tiredness that has nothing to do with sleep settle behind his eyes. McIntyre shares the last inch of a woodbine around the bay. 1 drag per man, the smoke a friend to the nose. Somewhere up the ridge, a boy plays with a German mouth organ he took from a coat. The tune does not belong to either army and does not ask permission. When dawn comes, it will be the color of old pewter. Orders will read spring in capital letters. Panthers will climb again in orderly files. Persuasive as accountants, PIAT teams will wait in lanes, patient as fishermen. The distance at which men once laughed has grown shorter overnight. July 25th, 1944. 04:30. A pewter dawn pressed flat over Verrières. The ridge is a wet knuckle under low cloud. Its forward slope stippled with ruined orchards and slit trenches. In assembly ditches outside Saint-Martin-de-Fontenay. Men of the Black Watch Royal Highland Regiment of Canada huddle under capes that shine with rain. Artillery lines crackle to life behind them, field guns and mediums muttering like kettles about to boil, and a creeping barrage begins to lift along the German line with dutiful, measured thunder. The word on the ops table says spring in large block letters. The word on men's faces says hold. Corporal Ewan McKinnon feels the PIAT's cold shoulder plate through his battle dress and webbing. Private Ian Forbes fits the first bomb with a twist and a quarter, thumb over the fuse cap, and drops the rest into the tin until they clack like crockery. Sergeant McIntyre adjusts the Bren team's arc with a finger and a scowl, and then squints toward the ridge as if he could will the mist to thin. A runner slides down the ditch with the harvest of last-minute corrections. Start line moved 10 yards forward. First bound to the hedgerow by the broken cart. Company left tied on the North Novas, then vanishes, leaving wet boot prints that fill with milk-colored water. On the minute, McIntyre says. Voice gone to gravel because only gravel won't slip. Barrage walks 90 yards every 3. We walk with it. If it shortens, we lie down. If it lengthens, we run. PIAT. Keep your head and your shoulder. No shots unless the lane gives them to you. We do not chase cats. The cats come to us. The barrage lifts its shoulder and moves. They go up the bank like men climbing into a cold bath. The field ahead is cut by sunken lanes and hedges bristling with wet bayonet twigs. The first bound feels absurdly easy, a dozen yards to the broken cart. Then another dozen to the chalky knoll where the 2-inch mortar man taps a smoke round into the tube and kisses his hand for luck. German machine guns wait out the first 2 minutes with the frigid discipline that has made them hard to pry loose all summer. Then MG-42s begin their sermon flat. Tireless hammering that finds the places between the barrage's falling sheaves. Men learn the ground by the height at which bullets comb at ankles in the grass, knees along the hedgerow lip, bellies 5 inches off the ditch's bottom. Left, the Bren gunner shouts. A slit in the far hedge opens with a muzzle flash as brief as a blink. The Bren answers in 3-round kisses, neat and respectful. A Panzer Grenadier section breaks from a shell-bitten orchard and double times for the ditch, stopping only when white shreds of bark leap from the trees in a line tracing their ribs. The barrage rolls on, impersonally helpful, and the infantry try to keep their feet in its shadow. At the second bound, near the ruined piggery with its roof laid in a single slab like a fallen book cover, the first Panther noses through a gap in a wall. It is close enough that men see the light gather on the gentle slope of the glasses. Close enough that the cupola plexiglass flashes when the commander turns his head. McIntyre does not raise his voice. Lane, he says, which is both order and permission. McKinnon heaves the PIAT higher on his shoulder like a stonemason taking a breath. Forbes steadies the tail and murmurs the litany safety live. Tail firm. Sight stub, though the PIAT does not listen to men. The lane gives them kindness, a shallow fold of ground that keeps the Churchill troop out of it for another 30 seconds. A chunk of wall that will force a turn of the Panther's nose. The knowledge more felt than seen that German Cokes will rake low first and then climb. McKinnon sits into the mud, left knee high, right foot braced, cheek to the stock. Sight stub black and stubborn against a world that will not keep still. Now, he says, and the PIAT does its ugly duty. The bomb kisses steel a hand's breadth above the right idler, writes its inward fire along the track run, and the Panther sags with a hurt that feels personal. Forbes is already fishing another bomb from the tin. Smoke on the wall, McIntyre calls, and the mortarman lays a 2-round scarf that turns the gap into a bad idea. The Panther commander hesitates, and in that hesitance, a second tank shouldered behind him noses up to look and shows the seam of engine deck and rear plate like a man tugging his collar in heat. McKinnon lets the sight settle on the louvers and squeezes a heartbeat late. The shaped charge does what mathematics designed it to do in a Glasgow office months ago. Flame licks. Not dramatic at first, then decisive. The coax answers anyway, stitching the hedge with hot wire. Splinters jump from a post, one finding the meat of Forbes's forearm. He swears, surprised more than hurt, and keeps his hands where they need to be, on their right, where the ground lifts toward Macer Orne. Black watch companies step into a hollow's mouth that is already full of German artillery words. Shells comb the wet wheat into lying hair. Platoons that were tidy rectangles on the sergeant major's board this morning smear into crooked, stubborn lines of men sheltering behind swales that have names only in this hour. John's Dip, the Biscuit, the Finger. Runners go down and runners get up. A major walks forward as if on parade, Kane left behind today, and sets a new start line with the heel of his hand. His voice is audible to nobody except the boys who need it and himself. Panzer Fours join the argument, shorter and older than Panthers, but mean in the way an old dog is mean around a bone. A Pack 40 cracks from the orchard, masked by a neat stack of brush. A Churchill takes the hit in the mantlet and staggers like a man cuffed, then throws its 75 back through the hedge with farmer's contempt. The tank line coughs forward and holds. The infantry line bleeds forward and holds. Word rides the net, South Saskatchewan stalled at Tilly-la-Campagne. North Nova's catching hell in ifs. The Calgary's looking for a seam with the tall Churchills. Word also rides the net that nobody says aloud, casualties heavy in the watch. Armor pushing left to right. A company set murmurs. Cats turning off the beaten lane. The Germans have read the map too. They feel for the places where our barrage has flattened the hedge into a low, muddy smear, and the men in khaki must cross on feet instead of knees. A Panther that should have been cautious gets bold and charges a shallow fold. It meets a mine like a covenant and halts with one corner sagging. Bren fire scalps its deck. A typhoon carves the field into argument marks. Artillery pounds lanes into impoliteness. The battlefield becomes a page with too many sentences and the punctuation written in smoke. McKinnon's team shifts twice more. The PIAT carried like a sleeping child through channels where Sten gunners crouch and riflemen count 9 rounds into clips that should hold 10. Twice they set a lane, and twice the lane chooses to remain a rumor. On the third move, near a drainage ditch where the water tastes of chalk and iron, a German voice surprises them close. Tired, angry at the wrong things. A Panzer Grenadier squad has crept the parallel ditch, hoping to shake the PIAT out like men shaking a rug. Bren answers first, then grenades, then a Sten's coarse cough in a hedge's breath. After, only rain and leaves and the next job. By late morning, the barrage has moved into a different parish and the sky has settled into the bad color of cheap tin. Operation Spring proceeds in pieces, gains here, stoppages there. Fate decided by yards and minutes and the stubbornness of men whose names the maps will not remember. In a field, the watch will later call by a church that no longer has a steeple. The casualty clearing post fills with accents from Montreal, Hamilton, Saskatoon. The stretcher bearers have the particular quiet of men who must put their hands into other men's blood in a way that feels like work instead of theft. Coy HQ wants us back one hedge, McIntyre says at noon, voice worn down to string. Churchills are going to nose that lane proper. We guard their bellies. no freelance. McKinnon and Forbes haul the PIAT to a new corner. The weapons spring, singing its thin wire song each time the lever winds, for the first time all day. When McKinnon sights along the stub, he sees more orchard than tank. He breathes in the smell of broken apples and smoke, and hears a crack of laughter from a bay down the line, one man telling another the story of a fish that got away in Ontario. The lie helps them both. German after-action notes will say later that close-range Holadung caused mobility kills that turned Panthers into pillboxes, dangerous still, but fixed, and therefore findable by artillery and aircraft. Those notes will not mention the taste in a man's mouth when he lies in a ditch as a tank passes close enough to spill warm air down his neck. They will not mention the way a PIAT's kick bruises bone through wool, or the way a bomb tin feels heavier after you see what it does. They will not mention that the laugh about the hopeless projector has grown quiet in hedgerow country. Toward evening, the order to consolidate comes down like a blessing with dirty hands. Sections count each other in 2s and 3s. The watch is a thinner regiment by roll call, thicker by legend. Churchills sit in the low light with their engines ticking, smelling of steam and paint and cooked mud. McKinnon leans the PIAT against a stump and rubs the heel of his right hand where the butt plate found bone. Forbes wraps a field dressing around his grazed forearm and ties the knot one-handed without comment. "Stand to at last light. Sentries 2 and 2, McIntyre says, and squints into the ridge's purple. Cats don't like the dark, but men do stupid things in it. Night will bring counter-penetrations, patrols feeling for edges, and artillery that pretends it can see. Dawn will bring more spring in block letters and another try at the same gates, between the two. PIAT teams will sleep in pieces and dream of quiet rooms with shelves that hold nothing heavier than books." 0808, 1944. 2331, south of Caen. The night lit wrong. Searchlights banked on low cloud turned darkness into a smeared silver noon, artificial moonlight, the sappers call it, so the infantry can see without being seen the way day makes men visible. The start line runs from Saint-André-sur-Orne to Ifs. Beyond it, the N-158 is a black ribbon leading to Santo and the ridge by Gomsnil, where Panthers have been content to swat daylight attacks like flies. Tonight, the plan is not a push, but a break 8 Corps to the west and 2 Canadian Corps to the east, with a column of Churchills, Shermans, and ramshackle kangaroo carriers grinding forward in boxy, shadowed order, infantry tucked inside like seeds in a pod. Lance Sergeant Hamish Boyd of the 6th Battalion, Black Watch Highland Division, rides knees up in a kangaroo that smells of warm gearbox and canvas. The PIAT lies across his thighs, a stubborn length of pipe and spring and bad manners. Private Alec Dalrymple taps the bomb fuse cap with a gloved nail 1, 2, quarter turn and sets the heavy shape back into its tin. 4 more nestled like loaves. A driver's hand bangs twice on the sidewall ready, and the column begins to move with the creak and groan of a village deciding to migrate. Ahead, the barrage lifts in sheets, mediums and heavies walking lanes as if painting straight lines down to fillets. Night air flexes with percussion. Under it, the kangaroos clatter at a steady 12 miles an hour. Too fast for nerves, too slow for fear to give up. The searchlight glow makes hedges throw long, soft shadows. Every tree looks carved from chalk. Moonlight makes cats lazy, someone says. Too loud for a joke, a corporal answers. Cats don't know the word, and that ends it. Contact comes not as a shot, but as a shape. A panther angled across a farm track at Gomsnil's edge, its crew either clever or surprised into doing the right thing. The first Sherman in column throws smoke like a squid. A Churchill Aver noses up to bully the corner in the kangaroo. Boyd slaps the driver's shoulder. Down. Here. The carrier slews behind a hedge gap. The ramp crashes. The night breathes in, and the section spills into grass wet enough to soak through wool in a heartbeat. The moonlit trick shows its teeth. German flak-toed 20s dragged forward as ersatz anti-tank. Cough tracer along the hedgerow crowns. An MG-42 combs a lane at knee height with the patience of a barber. A crocodile's jet hisses somewhere ahead. The flame washing barn timber to skeleton. Boyd's world shrinks to a right angle of ditch and hedge, and the Panther's deck glimmering 60 yards out like a stone under shallow water. He slides the PIAT to his shoulder, heel braced, left knee high. Dalrymple lies behind and left, steadying the tail, hand on the spring lever ready to wind when the weapon's foul temper demands it. Hold, Boyd breathes, as much to the spring as to himself. The Churchill's coax stutters at the Panther's periscope and cupola, annoying a lion with gravel. The big cat moves, not forward but an inch backward, the driver's instinct cautious. That inch shows the right track run ahead of the first road wheel bare. Perfect, vulnerable. Boyd lets the sight stub settle the way a carpenter lets a line hang true. He squeezes. The PIAT kicks like a mule trying to climb into his shoulder. The shaped charge bomb arcs and kisses steel exactly where mathematics and luck shake hands. The Panther lurches like a wagon losing a wheel, settles crooked, and throws sparks under the idler as the track runs itself off. Its turret shifts coax, probing the hedgerows dark for the insult, and Dalrymple is already cranking the lever with a grunt and a curse that could be prayer. Again, Boyd says, voice scraped to bone. Second shot engine deck. The bomb lands near the grills. A gout of dirty flame belches. The turret goes still for 2 breaths. Then jerks. A figure heaves from the commander's ring-white scarf. Blackened face hesitates a fraction at the edge of the moving world, then dives. Bren fire stitches over his shoulder into the cupola. The hatch claps shut, then opens again, then shuts forever. Boyd doesn't watch the rest. He has learned that completion is an artilleryman's luxury and a PIAT man's risk. The column breathes again. Kangaroos crawl through the gap. A crocodile shoulders the road and sprays its lizard hiss into a hedge that had pretended to be a wall. Sappers run bent double with Bangalore torpedoes, shoving the tin sausages under wire as if feeding something with a particular appetite. Beyond, the police boxes of Panther hulls, those that dominated daylight, become silhouettes to avoid rather than anchors to rally around. The night belongs to speed and purpose, not to gunnery. On the left, Worthington Force loses itself in darkness and bad maps, finding German anti-tank belts by driving into them until steel speaks. On the right, the 51st Highland Division makes steady, grinding yards on Verrier's shoulder, paying with names that will be chiseled neat in stone later and said messily by the living now. In the center, at Saint-Aignan-de-Cramasnil, an armored regiment punches into a 12th SS pocket. Later, men will argue over which Canadian tank ace killed which German tank ace in a hedge near the N158. Tonight, none of the names matter to Boyd's ditch. Only angles do. Dalrymple fumbles the next PIAT bomb, clumsy gloves. Rain-slick steel in Boyd's hand clamps his wrist with a grip that says both steady and sorry. From the far side of the road, a Panzer IV slips its nose into the lane. Old dog's muzzle sniffing the yard. A Typhoon's rockets stitch the field beyond with sudden, bright geometry. The Panzer hesitates, then reverses as if insulted by the daytime interlopers who have come to this silver night. A Churchill, whose commander has been waiting like a cat at a mouse hole, lays a 75mm that chips the Panzer's mantlet and pushes it back into whatever argument spawned it. The lane remains ours. A runner hammers up, breath-tearing, eyes wide with the good news that sounds wrong in men's mouths. Bound complete next bound, the N158 cut. Kangaroos through. Keep up. He glances at the PIAT, at Boyd's bruised cheek, at Dalrymple's raw hands. You boys married to that thing, he asks without malice. Dalrymple answers, till morning, and grins the way men grin when the absurd becomes a kind of pride. German after-action notes from units here: Panzerlehr, 12, SS fragments of 2. Panzer will mention in dry staff college prose Hochladungswaffen aus nächster Nähe, hollow charge weapons at closest range, causing Kettenabwurf track shedding and motorbrand engine fires. They will complain about visibility under searchlights, about artillery that walked too quickly and then not quickly enough, about tanks forced into lanes where infantry with clumsy tubes waited to reach up and change the geometry. Buried between the lines is an admission the Hedgerows have been teaching all summer. The fight in Normandy belongs to the first man who can make the other stop moving. By 0340 on 08-09-1944, the N-158 is cut in two places. Kangaroos unload battalions onto objectives names only the ops board loves: green, blue, orange, while guns throw smoke and he in proportions learned at cost. In one ditch, Boyd and Dalrymple sit with the PIAT across their knees and realize, with a throb from collarbone to molar, that the old joke about the hopeless projector no longer fits in a ready-room mouth. The spring is wound, the bombs are heavy, the lanes ahead are still hedged with danger, but panthers that hunted by sunlight are bleeding in moonlight. That is enough truth for a night. "Stand to at first light," the platoon sergeant says, stepping into the ditch like a man stepping into his own doorway. "Dig what you can. Expect cats nosing. We hold till daylight, then we push." He looks at the PIAT, and then at Boyd's bruised face. "You two eat something, then sleep like you mean it. You'll be writing your names on somebody's engine deck again by breakfast." Above them, the artificial moon thins as cloud moves, and the real one leans west. Engines idle, tracks clink, somewhere, very far off. Falaise waits to become a pocket with a closing zipper made of men. In the ditch, the PIAT's spring gives a soft, satisfied tick as it settles. Dalrymple drops his head back on the hedge's root and sleeps with open mouth. Rain on his lip. Boyd keeps watch over a road made into a sentence that ends, for once, with a full stop. 08-19-1944. 06-12 east of Saint-Lambert-sur-Dive. Dawn thin and mean. Mist standing knee-high in the pastures like the breath of sleeping cattle. The pocket has not closed, not yet. It buckles and mends like a torn coat caught on a nail. Roads are rivers running west to east, all of them choked with wreckage and men who have learned the word hurry in 3 languages. The order for Boyd's platoon is brutally simple: cut the side lanes, hold the junctions, make every panther choose a different verb, then advance. Lance Sergeant Hamish Boyd wakes with a stick in his back and a bruise on his shoulder shaped exactly like a PIAT's temper. Private Alec Dalrymple shakes dew from the bomb tin lids, wipes the rubber noses with a sleeve polished to grease by habit, and mutters the litany fuse cap on. Quarter turn, check the tail spigot collar, keep the safety till the moment you need courage. A corporal from the sappers, tunic muddied to the pockets, sets a Hawkins mine where a cart rut pinches into a narrow Hedgerow's knuckle, then pats the dirt the way a tailor pats a seam and nods at Boyd. "Tracks will bite that," he says, and vanishes with wire and pliers as if swallowed by leaf. The junction they hold is nothing on the map, a cross of 2 sunken lanes with a humpback bridge over a stream so neat it looks painted. To the northwest, the heavy rumor of guns never stops. To the southeast, the roads cough columns, grenadiers marching tired, staff cars without staff, motorcycles in singles and frightened pairs. And sometimes, always, when the stomach least wants it, the squared shoulders of a tank nose, black-crossed and brisk, testing the lane like a dog testing a door. "Stand to," the platoon sergeant says, voice made of gravel and sleep. "No skylines. Wait to see the cat's whiskers before you shoot at its eyes." It comes close to 7, a Panther D. Front mudguards torn. One spare track link hanging like a medal. Commander showing elbows at the cupola, with the easy arrogance of a man who has already outlived 3 bad minutes and expects a 4th to behave. 2 Panzer Grenadiers trot ahead with carabiners held low, glancing hedgerow to hedgerow, the way men learn to look when the hedges have been killing them all summer. Boyd sees not a tank, but the first mistake: the driver's right track rides the crown of the lane instead of the hollow. In this country, crowns are lies and hollows are truth. He lets the sight stub sit on the running gear like a sober fingertip on a pulse. "Hold," he breathes. And Dalrymple's palm presses the PIAT's butt as if it might forget the ground is there. The Hawkins mine whispers its simple theology as the track kisses it. The Panther jolts, lurches 12 inches left, and shows belly between the last road wheel and the idler, a glimpse as brief as a blink. Boyd squeezes. The PIAT's spring unloads with its familiar mule kick, and the shaped charge bomb draws a neat white line through mist and history. It lands where mathematics invited it. The belly rings, flame coughs from the grill. The big cat tries to continue the sentence and finds its verb has changed tense. The commander ducks to his belt, pops back up with a pistol he cannot aim at anything that matters, and dives. Bren fire combs the cupola lip. The loader tries the side hatch, then decides the world is bigger above than below and follows his officer into wet grass. The Panther's turret moves once like a man shifting in his sleep, then settles. Dalrymple cranks the lever with that wince he has learned to hide, presents another bomb nose to Boyd's palm. Second, he asks. No, Boyd answers, reading the small smoke that says the engine is already telling its own story. Save it. More sentences coming. The Panther burns with the reluctant, rolling flame of fuel that never wanted to leave a tank. On the road beyond the bridge, a Panzer IV noses up behind a hayrick, turret already casting for a target. A hollow thunk, thunk, thunk from the far hedgerow answers before Boyd can 2-inch mortar smoke. Pale coins dropped precisely on the Panther's wreck and the bridge crown. The Panzer rotates away from the ghost and not from the men. A Churchill on the far bank, hull down in a ditch that has been a ditch since Charlemagne, lays a 75 that slaps the side of the turret hard enough to make the crew blink and then back. The lane belongs to fear now, not to steel. By midday, the stream's bank is busy with men and paper. Prisoners come in by file hands at shoulder height in that careful posture learned in every army, and are sat down in a row with cigarettes and complicated expressions. A Feldwebel, 40 and furious with a cut on his ear that will not staunch, stares at the PIAT across Boyd's lap with something a hair's breadth from contempt and another from respect. He says in usable English, "This pipe, we were told it is, what is the word, ridiculous." He gestures toward the steaming Panther, then to the dented bridge parapet. Now we paper ridiculous and make a stamp. Dalrymple, who has a gift for silence, offers him the cigarette. The German takes it and smokes like a man who remembers etiquette and has mislaid his manners. Later, someone from Brigade Intelligence arrives with a clipboard and a habit of tidy notes. He wants bearings and yards and the number of bombs fired, and whether the base fuse caps seemed tight and damp, and whether the launch spigot showed signs of erosion, and if the spring took full wind every time. Boyd gives him the craft and not the poetry, because the only poetry worth saying is in the ditch and the smoke. The intel man nods and says quietly, "The Germans are complaining." He taps his pencil on the Panther's track, then on the mud where the Hawkins sat. Short-range hollow charges, from hedges, from windows, from holes, their words. We'll make them ours. Through the afternoon, the pocket tightens. A company of the Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders of Canada pushes across the stream and takes the little rise that makes the bridge worth owning. A Cromwell troop barrels up, dust in fans behind. The troop leader's radio voice is all breezy cheer until his gunner calls tank right, with the flat tone of a man who has noticed mortality behind a hedge. The Cromwell slews, throws smoke, and reverses into the fat of a sunken lane like a fish going to ground. A Typhoon pair flashes north, rockets already loose in bright cross-stitches toward a crossroads we will never learn to pronounce. War in the pocket is not a battle, it is a braid. At 1740, a convoy tries the bridge with desperation instead of Plan Opals. A staff car with curtains, a half-track with a tarp flapping like a torn sail, men shouting in two ranks of panic. The first truck sees the Panther's carcass and tries to nose past. The second nudges. The third panics and shunts. The half-track's gunner, more brave than useful, rakes the far hedge until the Bren speaks his name in iron. "Hold the PIAT. Hold," Boyd mutters, choosing targets he can hurt, and leaving the river to the sappers and the artilleryman on the far bank who calls down a measured, courteous 25-pounder stonk that persuades a stream to become a wall. The convoy becomes 3 fires and a folk tale. Dusk leans in from the hedges. The smell is wet hay, hot oil, pennyroyal crushed under boots. and that metallic tang that lives behind the teeth when shaped charges earn their thesis. The platoon sergeant pads the line. Hand on shoulders one by one. Stand to till dark proper. Then dig. Rotate sleep. Cats will nose after midnight. They always do when they've argued with the day and lost their temper. He taps the PIAT with 2 fingers. Not unkind. You and your pipe. You saved us petrol and sermons today. In a farmhouse half-shelled by yesterday, Brigade writes an evening summary. It mentions small parties with PIAT employed forward of roadblocks. Multiple enemy vehicles immobilized by track damage. And Panther set ablaze by close-range bomb to engine deck. Somewhere a German Ike officer writes his own tidy list of laments and adds a line that will be quoted in classrooms decades from now: infantry with hollow charge projectors at very short distance in hedgerow country effective. Between those 2 tidy lines lies a damp ditch, a bruised shoulder, a spring that wound and unwound all summer, and a road that changed who owned it because one man waited for the inch that showed between wheel and wheel. Night comes with the patient steps of cows. The pocket tightens with the sound of boots on wet road and the quiet grief of men counting names under their breath. Boyd and Dalrymple share a tin of something that pretends to be stew and is forgiven because it is warm. They set the bomb tin lids back like coffins put away for another morning. The PIAT lies across their knees, spring at rest, a tool that looks like an argument and has spent the day changing minds. 09/20/1944. 07:45, a damp verge west of Nijmegen. Mist clings in tufts to drainage ditches, and the Vaal glows like dull pewter under a low sky. A line of British carriers noses along a poplar-lined road toward the bridges, their engines making a polite clatter that seems out of place in a morning with so much edge. Lance Sergeant Hamish Boyd sits high in the back of a kangaroo. PIAT across his knees, the spring wound, the bomb's rubber nose dark with dew. Private Alec Dalrymple counts the tins by touch and mutters the same quarter-turn litany that has become both spell and habit. Far off, someone fires a 2-inch mortar. The round thunks into fog and leaves only a thought behind. Orders for the day are stitched to everyone's sleeves. Keep the corridor open. Keep the bridges breathing. Keep the Germans guessing which lane is safe. None. The Highlanders will protect the road column. The guards will lunge north. And the guns will write a straight line through bad grammar. In the carriers, men share rumors passed hand to hand like precious. Dented coins Arnhem still holding. Gliders in gardens. A Staffordshire sergeant major with a PIAT breaking a street full of self-propelled guns by stubbornness alone. No one in Boyd's kangaroo knows the name yet Baskyfield, but the story lands with the weight of a fact men want to be true. The corridor's first argument arrives in steel and smoke, a panther hunched at a crossroads. Nose toward the Waal dike, turret half a degree to the right in that casual pose that means a gunner is awake. 2 Panzer grenadiers run the verges, heads low, the twin habits of speed and caution in their shoulders. The first British tank throws a smoke candle that blooms a white hedge. The second, impatient, grinds wide and flings a 75mm HE that chips a barn corner into straw. Boyd slaps the driver's shoulder. Off that ditch. Dalrymple is already unhooking the ramp chain. The kangaroo slews. Wet earth leans at their ankles and they spill into a ditch that smells of onion weeds and rust. Track crown, Boyd says. Eyes on the Panther's right run through a veil of smoke. The cat inches to cross the pitted lip of macadam into the field momentary belly shown between idler and last wheel. The old gift hedgerows give to patient men. The PIAT's stub of a sight sits steady as a plumb line. Hold, he whispers, and feels Dalrymple's hand press the butt into the ditch floor as if memory could be made to help. He squeezes. The spring unloads with that mule's kick he has learned to take in bone and not in flesh. The bomb draws a thin white line in damp air and strikes the Panther at the exact joint luck and training meet. A cough of dark flame. The track peels like ribbon. The cat heaves, then settles awkward. Still dangerous, but no longer moving as a sentence that expects to be finished. Bren fire chatters against the cupola rim. A German throws himself out of the hatch and rolls into sugar beet leaves, scrambling on elbows. The machine remains a shape the column must steer around, but no longer a decision the column must negotiate with. Wind, Dalrymple grunts, cranking the lever, face pinched to keep his own voice from shaking the one place in his body that must hold steady. Again, save it, Boyd says, reading smoke and stillness like handwriting, more inches coming. All morning, the corridor breathes like a man running. Kangaroos clatter through small Dutch towns whose brick fronts look freshly scrubbed, even with holes punched in them. Guards Shermans nose along dikes with the cautious arrogance of cats on barn beams. Sappers jump from carriers with mine prodders that make them look like fishermen working a shallow pool. The PIAT rides across Boyd's knees, a length of pipe that has made a case for itself in hedgerows from Caen to the Orne, and now along canals where willows dip the water as if bowing to the business at hand. By noon, word arrives that the north has turned into a knife fight in narrow streets. Oosterbeek ringed, paratroopers spending bravery like coin and time like breath. Names float south, light and heavy at once, frost at the bridge. A chaplain carrying men under fire. A Staffordshire sergeant major, there he is again, hunched behind a broken gun. Working a PIAT until nothing in his lane dares to move. The corridor stiffens its back and keeps walking. In a barn-shouldered hamlet near Elst, Boyd and Dalrymple take a doorway as if it were a pew. The PIAT's nose just clears the lintel. The bomb tin sits on a churn. The section's Bren covers the lane with implacable patience. Across the way, a Panzer Fours commander rises to his belt, binoculars high, and returns to the cupola the instant the Bren twitches. The old dog knows the game. The new dog the half-track behind. Canvas's flapping does not. The half-track lurches into the open as if a road could forgive naivety. Boyd chooses the easy sin. He puts a 3-second saw of 303 along the hood with the Bren until steam and flame agree that the lane belongs to someone else. The Panzer backs away with dignity intact, which is sometimes the best you can offer a man you may kill tomorrow. Evening brings rain that tastes faintly of coal smoke. The road gutters shine. A bicycle leans against a cottage wall. Both wheels punctured and the saddle carefully covered with a cloth. Somebody's life paused. Not thrown away. In the ditch. Dalrymple rubs his shoulder and says, soft as if to himself, it's less of a monster now. He means the PIAT. He means the war. He means the knowledge that there is a place in every moving thing where a small, exact violence will stop it. Across the river and up the line. Paper catches the change. German after-action sheets from August and September keep their staff college tone but bleed onto the margins Hochladungswaffen aus nächster Nähe. Hollow charge weapons at the closest range, häufig in Hecken and Häusern, often from hedges and houses, Kettenabwurf, Motorbrand, Seeschlitze beschossen, track shedding, engine fires, vision slits raked by fire. A Panzerlehr report complains that infantry with Hochladung deny crossroads and lanes at 50 meters and less, making Deutsche Panzerbewegung nur unter schwerem Verlust möglich. German tank movement only at heavy loss. The words are not concession, they are complaint, but in complaint lies admission. Winter closes, wet and mean. 0102, 1945, in the Reichswald. Boyd's section follows Churchill crocodiles through a tunnel of trees that look like organ pipes in a ruined church. The PIAT is no longer a rare guest at the front of an infantry section. It is the forward chair. The spring wins and unwinds with the same Street Fighter temper, the same bruise. The rockets sing in other squadrons. The 6-pounders bite where lanes open. The PIAT takes over where a hedge or a barn corner narrows a choice to one that a man with sore shoulder and clear eye can change. There are failures too, bomb noses that split in the cold, tails that wobble, shots spoiled by a fuse cap not quite turned home. A spring not quite to full cock because fingers under wet wool lie about strength. A man in Boyd's platoon cracks a collarbone and jokes that the PIAT owes him a pint. Another swears the kick reset a shoulder he'd put out at football in '39. The weapon remains what it has always been: crude, vicious, particular, and within its yardage enough. Spring returns with a pale, watery light that makes every field look like it has forgiven no one. 0307, 1945. Remagen announced like a prayer answered before it was asked. Bridges stand where men thought walls were permanent. The PIAT rides forward anyway because roads still have corners and corners still hide engines. And then the day arrives that makes future dates meaningful. 0508, 1945. 10:04, a hedged lane north of Munster. Clouds torn to gauze. A runner comes with his cap askew and a face that cannot decide whether to laugh or cry. "Cease operations," he says, as if testing whether the words will bear weight. Cease. The platoon sergeant lets breath go as if he'd been holding it since June. Dalrymple sits down on the PIAT case like a parishioner at the end of a sermon he did not know he wanted to hear. Boyd looks at the lane that taught him geometry and patience and distance yards you can pace, inches you must feel, and puts the safety back on a bomb for the first time in a year. Later, in a schoolroom that smells of chalk and boot polish, an intelligence officer lays out captured German files. In them are the tidy phrases Boyd has spent 12 months writing in smoke and steel: Panthers immobilized by track strikes at Sehr Kurz Entfernung, Panzers burned after Motorraumtreffer, engine bay hits, tank commanders complaining that Infanteriewaffen mit Hochladung make hedgerow lanes verboten ohne starke Begleitung forbidden without strong escort. The officer taps the paper. Then the PIAT propped in the corner. Then Boyd's bruised shoulder with an almost apology. They laughed. He says, not unkind. They don't write laughter. They write this. In the dispersal yard, the PIAT leans against a wall under a sky that finally looks like a place rather than an argument. Its paint is chipped to primer on the corners where hands always go. The spring still bites the palm if you try it. The bombs sit in tins with rubber noses dulled by months of rain and handling. It was never elegant. It was rarely comfortable. It asked for a man to put his face close to danger and believe that a pipe with a temper could turn steel into a puzzle. In Normandy's hedges, under Caen's moonlight, at the Falaise roadblocks, along the Val's poplars and the winter trees of the Reichswald. It did. Boyd rests his hand on the launch tube and feels nothing move inside, no wound spring, no anger waiting to be used. Dalrymple, who has learned to make jokes only after the worst minutes pass, says, "We should send it a pint," Boyd answers, "and a shoulder rub." They laugh. It is small and right. Outside the gate, a bicycle rolls by with both tires pumped and a loaf of bread in the basket. The war is not a sound now. It is a series of tools put away carefully by men who have learned to clean what saved them. German tank crews mocked the hopeless PIAT. In the Hedgerows, Panthers fell, and the mockery went missing from their ink. The after-action sheets kept the tone of professionals. The lanes kept the memory of a different voice, the snap of a spring, the grunt of a man taking a kick, the whisper of a shaped charge crossing yards so short you could measure them with your breath. That is where the joke ended and the doctrine began.